So Jesus came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired by his journey, was sitting by the well. It was about noon. A Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." His disciples had gone to the city to buy food. And there follows a discussion then in which Jesus reveals who he is. Then, leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah?" They came out of the town and made their way toward him. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. "He told me everything I ever did." So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. They said to the woman, "We no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Saviour of the world." Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome again to Monday Matthew, although it is one of those weeks in this year where it's not actually Matthew, it's John, the joys of election. So if you were following that in your community, around the presbytery, or wherever you might be watching this, to John chapter 4 with Jesus' encounter with a woman at the well. And it's a great story. So this morning, I have asked a couple of our folks who run a fabulous Bible study in their house, Lee and Alan Hindmarsh, to delve into just one part of that rather lengthy story. So welcome along, you two. Good to see you.
How are you?
Not too bad at all. So Jesus comes to the well, and it's interesting how different versions of that, some say he had to go that way, perhaps not, but he chose to go that way. And he encounters this very unusual woman. And it's interesting, but if you look at John's gospel, other than his close disciples and maybe his mum, he hasn't told anybody else who he is. It's almost like undercover Messiah. And so when she starts to ask the questions and says, "One day someone will come," he says, "Look, you need to know, it's me." And then they get into that conversation where she wants to argue about everything. She wants to have an argument about politics, about religion, about gender, about morals, just whatever it takes to avoid the issue. He says, "You need to know where you can find living water." I think the thing that struck you most in your study group was what happens after that. How does she respond when she finds out who Jesus is? Where did you go with it?
Well, to start with, it was so countercultural, the actual meeting, in so much that, and she said it herself, when Jesus asked for a cup of water, she replied and said, "Well, how come you're a Jew? I'm a Samaritan. What are you doing asking me for a cup of water?"
So we get us and them straight away.
Clash, yeah. And then, of course, as you said, she wanted to go on an attack, and she put on all these silly sort of arguments. And of course, Jesus was having absolutely naught of that, and spun the whole thing around. And when he said, "If you knew who was asking for a cup of water, he would give you living water." So yeah, that was. And then, because she continued after that, of course, what she did after that, after she realised that after the conversation that they had, and completely spun her out, and she didn't mug around, she left the water jar and bolted.
So there's a change for her, and that leads to a change for others. How do you read that story about her going back into the village to tell people what she's found?
Well, she wanted to share that story, and she wanted to serve and ask the question, could this be the Messiah?
And was astounded that he knew all about her with her husband and not living with her husband. He wasn't her husband.
Yeah.
And how does he know all that?
I love the way in which it's a very personal thing to start with. He knew, and it's almost as if He knew all about me, and that's okay. For some reason, other people know stuff about her, and it's shame, and it's gossip, and it's guilt. But Jesus knows about me, and that's okay. How did you relate to that thought?
Well, she acknowledged there was something very, very different about Jesus as the Messiah. She knew in her own heart, I believe, that he was, but she didn't want to say particularly that, but came back with a question. And she was met with disbelief initially, but she swung obviously quite a number of people around. But then it goes on. But yeah, keep going.
Lee, how do you find that idea that she still had a question? You know, could this be the Messiah? How important is it for some people to still say, well, I'm not 100% sure, but I reckon?
Well, we are Greek thinking, aren't we? And I think we think there's more to it, but we are Greek thinkers. We question everything, and that's exactly what she did. But in her heart, I'm sure she knew that he was the Messiah. Yeah.
The other wonderful part of that, I think, Alan, you were touching on it there, where, you know, people wondered and people maybe, you know, didn't, but it's her story. And if it's your own story, well, then it is what it is. And folks, you can take it or leave it, but here's what's happened to me.
Yes.
Did you consider that when she got back to the community?
Yes. One of the wonderful things about this story, the underlying message to me is that I mean, it was wonderful good news. She had this good news of meeting with Jesus, but the thing is that the thing that came to me was that it was wonderful good news for everyone, including me, and you, but and even the least of those who we might expect. And she was certainly the least.
It's amazing how he...
Yeah, go on, sorry.
It's amazing how he comes across those people that are, well, we would say in our society, a little bit ostracised. But he brings them in, brings them into new life.
I sometimes wonder, it looks as if Jesus comes across them, but he went there.
Yeah, of course he did.
He chose to go there, and for the sake of that visual, and then the spin-off from that. What do you make of that line, the way John tells it, and I love the fact that John wasn't there. I mean, the disciples have gone on a backers run.
Oh, right.
Relying upon what Jesus tells them later. But the fact that when people do come and they get to know him and they say something like, at first, we were interested and we believed because of what you had to say, but now we believe for ourselves. What do you make of that for church today?
Well, that's very true, and it stands true for church today. Yeah, it is a personal commitment, and therefore, and just as they acknowledge that they personally believe by what the woman said, but then they realised themselves when they saw with their own eyes what Jesus was about. Yeah,
Possibility to ask good questions and even the hard questions of Jesus, and come towards a conclusion. We may doubt, we may have trouble, but if this becomes our, and then we have a responsibility to own that and share it around, and then we'll see what. If people come to Jesus themselves, they can ask their own questions. They can get knowing for themselves, and then we start to see whole communities begin to change. It's a fabulous story.
It is.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful.
Well, thank you both very much, and thank you for opening scriptures with others, and that is just a great commitment and an enormous act of hospitality in your home each week. And so we bless you for that, and enjoy the rest of Lent.
We will.
We will.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks.
See ya. Thanks,
Aye.
bye.